we live in a time of disruption and change all around us every day at a pace that we're probably not super comfortable with in our in the macro environment, in our organizations, in our personal lives, etc. But I think we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and don't be afraid to disrupt yourself.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell, and today on the show, we have Shannon Urban. Shannon is the Chief Audit Executive at Hasbro, and if you're not watching this on YouTube, I've got Shannon's LinkedIn profile pulled up. Her background is probably the best one I've ever seen. And again, if you're just listening, you're not watching the video, we get to see what Shannon's office looks like also, and it is hands down the coolest office that I've ever seen. So go check that out for just like a second, like skip to the middle of it, just check out Shannon's office. Some of the things that we hit on with Shannon is how she's upskilling her entire team for AI and analytics, topics that she is discussing with her CAE peers on various roundtables. There is a strategic initiative to reallocate about half of the full-time employees under Shannon. As we talk about the reasoning of that, the benefits behind it. It's a pretty interesting take. And then we talk about Shannon's mindset and being able to build credibility with the board. We've been hitting on that a decent amount the past few episodes. So that's something that you maybe are struggling with. I would highly recommend listening to the past probably 6 episodes where we hit on that topic pretty hardcore across each one of those. So with that said, here we go. All right, what's in either your internet browsing history? There's always good stuff there. And or your ChatGPT. I know your ChatGPT and Copilot Enterprise Wide up there, so either one. But what's been going on there? Anything, a personal use, professional use? What have you been doing? What have you been up to?
I've been using ChatGPT a lot lately. It's like my new favorite toy. um, so on the professional side, I guess right now is there's a script sitting in there for a code of ethics and compliance training that's being developed for the company. It's kind of an instructor-led combo with live virtual. There's a game at the end, kind of this quest based off of Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. It's going to be a really cool training session. And so there was an opportunity to incorporate some internal controls content and fraud risk content, like segregation of duties and ownership and accountability, things like that, into the training. So I took the script that was pretty much fully baked, plopped it into ChatGPT and said, "Hey, I'm looking to insert some content on these topics," and it generated suggested places like new slides, scenario questions, call out boxes, did you know, that kind of thing, and then pretty coolly, like in the dragons horde challenge at the end, right? There's part of the quest where you have to answer some questions around segregation of duties, which I thought was pretty cool. So that was fun on the professional side. On the personal side, I would say in my Chat GPT history right now is about 125 multiple choice questions around things like fraud risk, analytics, and cybersecurity. You would think I would kind of know some of that stuff already, and
Yeah.
it's not for me. It was for my son, who is
Okay.
an accounting major.
I was wondering how this was a personal thing. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah, well,
okay,
he's got a class in accounting information systems, this
got it.
semester, and so he had, I don't know, 3 finals happening back to back, and he was kinda stressing out about it, and I'm like, "Let me create you a Quizlet kinda thing,"
Yeah.
and so we did that for him.
I know you've taken, so especially with Copilot and ChatGPT and it being enterprise wide for everyone at your organization, most people, everyone.
We're getting to everyone, yeah. So our CEO is incredibly bullish on AI. And so he has authorized and is paying for everyone to get the full Copilot license, Enterprise, and ChatGPT, as well as other specific tools to, for people to use on our creative side of our business. So text
Okay.
generation, video generation, et cetera. So we're going from like 0 to 60 on this as
Excellent.
a company.
Okay. I've said it before on this. There was a McKinsey study. I don't know if it was even necessary to do this study, but it basically said, hey, the CEOs that are going full bore on AI are the ones who are leading in AI. So it's very much a CEO led thing. And then that trickles down. similar with what we talk to CAEs. If it's the CAE that's like similar to you, Shannon, if they're like, hey, I built this thing using AI, or I use this AI tool that's outside um, typical Copilot, ChatGPT. Like I got this third party thing and I got it approved, and this is how we're using it. Those are the ones where it's like everybody else on the team is like, yeah, I got this use case and this use case and this use case. Because when you see, especially you see Shannon using these tools, if you're not super techie and don't want, like, you just, it's not something you would naturally want to be curious about. You go, well, if Shannon's do it, I mean, I kind of have to do it. So um, I think that's fantastic. That is huge right now to have that level of CEO support. Hey, everybody, we're going to take a quick break from our guests. And if you need to get analytics or AI actually working in your internal audit department, or if you already have some of it, you feel like you're not really getting exactly what you need out of it, there's more, you're not getting that, go to the show notes, look for the Green Skies Analytics link, click it. On the website, there'll be other links that you can click that'll take you directly to a calendar to schedule time. It's literally 3 clicks to get the time scheduled, to get it figured out. All right, back to the show. A lot of people have it. Everybody's eventually probably going to get it. How are you training your team? What are they doing relative to AI and analytics? And considering it's a gaming company, I have to think gamification is probably part of the mindset. So is there like, no, we never do traditional training. There's going to be something Monopoly related or Dungeons and Dragons related or something. Have you gone that track?
So my buddy, the CISO, is driving, kind of really leading the charge for the upskilling of the entire organization when it comes to using AI in particular. And so now that kind of everybody's going to have the license, everybody's going to have the capability. We want to make sure everyone's kind of starting off on a level playing field. So I haven't gotten a sneak peek. The training actually just started earlier this week for the first one, so I haven't seen it yet. But there's a whole series of different things that will be rolling out over the course of this year. For my team, interestingly, we were a couple of us, myself, one of my directors, one of my managers, were kind of early adopters. Before the rest of the company got licenses, we got licenses to Copilot, and just kind of were playing around. And we also got early versions of the ChatGPT licenses as well. And so, um, you know, these two individuals in particular were like very quickly were like, this is amazing. There's so much potential here for us as an internal audit function, but also for the company, and dove right in, and kind of upskilled themselves very quickly just because they thought it was cool. It was totally self-directed. And so what I've done is said, okay, I'm going to harness that enthusiasm and that energy, and I have kind of asked them to lean in. So they've become champions for the finance organization, in terms of building up the skill set, the use cases, et cetera, across finance, not just internal audit, but all of finance. For internal audit, we've right now we've tasked everybody in the department to go through the LinkedIn Learning Copilot certification program. We just rolled out LinkedIn Learning as an organization recently, so we figured we'd take advantage of that free stuff that was available to us. And so between kind of mid-April and mid-May, everybody on the team is going to go through and get that certification. They'll get a little badge to put up on their LinkedIn profiles, et cetera. And then at our next staff meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, everyone's going to bring one example of how they've used it for personal productivity. And also one idea about how either internal audit or the business can use it, as well. And so it's kind of like we made it like a team challenge and a little bit fun, to your point. It's not a competition. Nobody's gonna get a grade or anything, right? But I've said I'm gonna dedicate time. You have the time to go do this training. We're all gonna do this together and learn it together. And then we'll move on to ChatGPT and agentic AI and all of that throughout the year. So that's one way we're just trying to raise the water level of knowledge on the team. I've actually shared that approach with the rest of the finance leadership team as well, and so they're now in the process of kind of building out a plan for their teams,
Okay.
as well.
I really I like the personal aspect too when you add that. I've shared this story before, but that's really when I had to use this different analytics tool. at this company, and I didn't really like it a ton, and so I tried to ignore it as much as possible. And then it was around the time of fantasy football season, and so that's like that was one of my favorite parts was prepping for the draft and getting all this like data that ultimately never really matters. There's like one thing that actually matters. So if anyone's interested, they can hit me up and I'll let you know the one data point that actually matters in fantasy football that I found. But anyway, so I basically said, okay, I enjoy that personally, so that's what I'll use instead of doing it in my old tool. I'll do it in my new tool
Mhm.
to kind of get me over the hump of I hate this new tool. And so that's really how I learned a lot of what I learned, especially transferring those from one tool to the other. So I always try to recommend to people if you have like a hobby, and it was a little more difficult with analytics because if there's not basically transactional type data, you couldn't apply that
Yeah.
to, well, I like playing the guitar. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't really have, I don't have anything for that. Um,
Yeah.
but with yeah, AI, there's a ton of stuff you could do with
A
something that's
ton of stuff,
not
and it's easier, I find, than
yeah,
analytics, and so, admittedly, in our department, we're way behind the curve on using analytics at all. Like, we hardly used it for anything, and it was always one of
yeah,
those things like, "Yeah, we get it. Yeah, we understand the value that it can have," but it's such a steep hill to climb. It's like learning how to play Magic: The Gathering, right? It's just there's so much you need to learn about how it works and learn the tools and getting the data and all of that, that it just felt kind of insurmountable to us. But we're now in a position where, we are getting serious about that as well. And we just, we were an audit board shop, so we purchased the audit board analytics capability, which will kind of leapfrog us in some of the things we're able to do there. And then we'll kind of see where we go from there with it. But we were more in the mindset of we could maybe try to build this ourselves and invest, but we just didn't have a lot of success with that over the last few years, so we just went the buy it route.
okay. So we got Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering so far. I think we're gonna make a drinking game out of every time you mention a
A
game,
product.
or a
This
toy,
is not
yeah,
a
or a
sales,
product.
not a sales
Yeah,
pitch
yeah, I
by
like it a
any
ton.
means.
Um, what about the feedback? I've heard this from a couple audit departments already who have like kind of spearheaded it and said, we're going to take this on, we're going to crush the AI thing, and then finance or someone else uh, through osmosis kind of hears about what's going on and they go, well, that's cool. Can you teach us how to do what you're doing also? Have you gotten a lot of that also where people are now coming to you going, audits like the AI leaders of our organization or one of them?
Not yet, but I fully expect that to happen. We've had a couple of folks in finance who have reached out to one of my senior managers who said, "Hey, I'd really love to use AI somehow to help me review manual journal entries at the end of the period. Like, can you help me think through a use case there and figure that out?" So, like, yeah, sure, we can help you with that. We've been spending a lot of time with other parts of the organization developing bots or helping them develop bots to make their process easier over the last couple of years or so. So now it's kind of like, okay, well, is the bot the right answer, or is an agent maybe a better answer? And so I can see us kind of getting into that kind of from an enablement perspective as well.
I did a roundtable for an IAA, like a IAA CAE roundtable for a chapter last week, I think. And I had 6 topics, shared the agenda, shared the screen. Hey, here's 6 topics. We'll take it wherever you guys want to go. And there's like questions within each one of those that we could bounce off each other and discuss. And I said, we'll take it wherever you guys want to go though. Like this is your thing. We'll do it. AI, of course, was the first topic that was selected. After all the intros and all that kind of stuff, 40 minutes in, we're still talking AI. And this is after probably twice as the facilitator. I was like, okay, do you guys want to move on to anything else? And they're like, yeah, except one more thing. Like, you want to move on to anything else? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But just one more thing on that. And I think we ended with a few minutes on KPIs was the last thing they wanted to talk about. With all that said, any of these CAE roundtables or in talking to your CAE peers, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, and I do a lot of networking. I have a lot of groups that I'm connected with, see other CAEs, both industry wide and otherwise. Been to GAM, and other IIA events, and I think AI. If it wasn't every third session, it was like, there was an AI component in pretty much every session I went to, regardless of what the topic was. So absolutely AI, that resonates. And a lot of it, people are at different places with this, right? You've got people who are building their own LLMs, and then you've got people who are like, okay, how do I get started? Like, what should my AI governance policy include at my company, right? It's just all across the spectrum. So it feels like there's a lot of discussion there, and it's a lot of, everyone trying to figure out how can we help each other navigate through this, and
Okay.
figure it out for our companies. So that's definitely been a topic of conversation in every interaction I've had. I think for me as well, because a lot of the roundtables that I participate in are kind of industry focused. It's been about tariffs,
Yeah.
and supply chain and agility as well.
On the AI front, is the conversation revolving more around the use of it within internal audit, or, and I imagine it's both, or is it more risk and governance for the rest of the organization, which obviously hits internal audit? But I always talk about like there's opportunities with AI that we really need to be taking advantage of, but then we also have to balance the time of, well, there's risks also, and we got to be part of those discussions, trainings, educations, etc. What would you say the balance is, like 50-50, 60-40 one way? What's it
I
look
I
like, you
think
think?
it's probably 50-50. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, certainly the earlier conversations were around, "Okay, help me understand what I need to know so that when I get my arms around what our company is doing, I can evaluate whether we're, aware of all of the newer risks that are being introduced and things like that." So that was kind of more understanding the governance piece. Very quickly, though, it went to, okay, this is valuable for the company. This is really valuable for us too, in terms of our own internal audit processes. So I think a lot of the recent ones I've been in have been sharing of use cases. So different CAEs kind of getting up and saying, this is what we've done in our team, and this is how we're using it for risk assessment. This is how we're using it for planning and scoping of a project, for data analysis, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, and sharing those use cases so we can learn from each other that way too.
Okay.
What I haven't heard a lot of conversation on, but I am more, focused on, because I also have responsibility for the SOX program at our company, is, what is, as people start using generative AI in the business, in their processes, and perhaps even in the performance of their controls, what new risks do we need to be thinking about from a SOX perspective? Which seems to be getting a little bit of buzz, as well, as we try to figure that one out before we get too far into our SOX cycle this year.
I think you're the one that's kind of kickstarted that conversation amongst a lot of CAEs, and sent me over a 51-page PDF on the topic as well. Well, it hits on some of it, but from your learnings, now maybe I can share mine also. I'll summarize basically what you and I talked about earlier so that you don't have to hear the exact same thing again. But anything you could share high level, 80/20 on AI with SOX right now?
So I think, we had a team debrief on it this morning. We met with our external auditors yesterday who had created that 51-page thought leadership piece. We're all kind of at this point now where we are now trying to figure it out together. They are at a place where they can say, this is how we're going to treat it during our audit process. This is, what we want you to be thinking about management from a controls perspective. They're just not there yet. So it's an evolving area, without a lot of hard, clear, fast rules yet. Where kind of everybody's on the same page with them. But there are some basic things like, the need to understand, your data going in, completeness and accuracy, IPE considerations. What's the output coming out? And, can you get comfortable there that it's complete and accurate as well? Little less clear on what happens in the black box in the middle. And that's still an open question in my mind. But then, from a SOX perspective as well, like, what documentation do you need to keep? How do you demonstrate completeness and accuracy when you don't know what's happening in the black box, and how you're leveraging that output? Um, that's, I think, still needs to be hammered out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Basic IPE considerations. Um,
And I think on the documentation front, it's the more the merrier at this point.
yeah. Yeah, with,
Yeah.
people love keeping screenshots and, yeah,
Yeah.
documents. Do you keep the whole chat? I don't know, maybe,
Hmm.
right?
I
So,
think so. Yeah.
to be determined. But, the other thing that we're realizing very quickly is we need to provide some guidance to our control owners. So as now in our company, Hasbro, everybody's got the power, and the CEO is saying, charge, use it, drive productivity, make your processes more efficient by leveraging this technology, this capabilities. um, you know, People need to know where the guardrails are. And the considerations if you're a control owner operator, like if you decide to use it in the operation of that control, what does that mean? We
Yeah.
don't end up with a deficiency down the road.
The control owner education is huge. I doubt anybody's going out and looking at that specifically to understand that. I'm sure there's some, but for the most part, I think that's going to have to be a internal audit led initiative. The other thing, if I offered a practical, pretty easy to do tip, we'll call it for now, is I know relative to AI governance, there's always this struggle to basically get a list or a database of all the AI tools that are being used within our organization. Like everybody struggles with that. And so since we audit are out there all the time, whether it's SOX or operational, as like put some kind of checklist, you can call it, or questions in your walkthrough documentation or whatever it is you see a control owner. And even in SOX, I would say for each given SOX control, as you talk to those control owners, how are you using AI to execute this control? I wouldn't even ask if you are. I would say, how are you doing it? Because if it's an if, they might not be, as likely to tell you. But if you say, how are you using it? They're going to go like, okay, like, yeah, they know. So how are you using it in the execution of this control? And then what tools are you using? And if nothing else, I would also get that list from the AI governance committee or whoever owns that list also, so that you have that as support. But if you can add to that list for them and go that, and likely they don't care about the SOX control relative to it, maybe. But just to even say, hey, you guys had 12 tools, we found another 25 while we were doing our field work. Here you go. Here's the people that own them and are using them. I think that would be a fantastic win for internal audit, and it's super easy. It's a couple of extra questions.
That's one of the concerns I have is you may have this great AI governance committee and this process for getting tools approved and whatnot, but because it's so distributed and there's so much out there, like how do you control that? In do you have maybe when people are bringing new tools into the environment, but do you have a process in IT security or IT GRC or wherever it is to monitor for that, to make sure that we are picking up when somebody introduces something new and starts using it in the environment? Because not everybody's gonna necessarily do the right thing and, go through the whole committee approval process. That's just human nature.
Yeah, and it's too easy to get these. So it's kind of like I was thinking about this, the user acceptance, like whenever you download software and it's 1,000 pages long, and you go, "Yep, I read that." Click, and you're done. It's similar, I think, to AI, and then you just go, "All right, I know this thing can do my 8-hour process in 2 minutes, and so yes, I want that immediately." And I mean, like $5 a month for some of this stuff. I mean, it's so dirt cheap. Also, the pro ChatGPT is 20, and then the one up from that is 200. So maybe not the 200, but $20. That's a Netflix subscription.
Yeah, and I mean, we're also thinking about it too for our organization because we are a creative organization, right? We have to be concerned about IP and are we putting, our
Yeah,
brands out there in this public domain and then, generating video content, audio content, etc. from it. What are our policies around that? In fact, we've been very explicit in one of our divisions that said we are not going to use generative AI to generate artwork because we value what the artists bring to that as a craft.
Mhm.
But other parts of the organization, like for toy design, we might be using it significantly, right? So
Yeah,
you don't want to be putting your IP in jeopardy as well. So there's lots of different things to be thinking about that might not be
got
on
it.
everybody's radar right now.
All right, and then I think there was another reference to a potential product. I wanted to make sure I had this right for those playing the drinking game at home. You said we have the power. Was that a He-Man reference or no?
That was not an intended reference to anything. No.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know if it was I have the power, the He-Man thing. Okay, we'll strike that off. If people are playing at home, feel free to continue with whatever you want to do there. Um, all right. So, and I don't think this was related to AI, but I'll let you kind of tell the story. There was a pretty decent size resource allocation within your internal audit department. I'm just going to tee it up like that and then kind of let you take it over. Tell the kind of the backstory of that, where you are now, the impetus behind it.
Sure. Yeah. So about a year ago, we went through a major change in internal audit, completely restructured our org model. We realigned our mandate and our focus, and we reduced our headcount from 25 down to 11, and then brought in a significant co source partner. It was what I refer to as a hard reset of our internal audit department. It was really driven by I would say some fundamental changes that were happening at the company around us. So, our CEO had passed away in late 2023. And that just triggered kind of a cascade of turnover at the ELT level in the organization and much of our senior management team as well. And so the company embarked on this huge transformation journey. We had a new strategy coming in, very different philosophy from the leadership team, different culture. The previous CEO had just, for example, bought a film and TV studio because they were like, we want to use that as a vehicle to showcase our brands. And the new CEO was like, that's not core to what we do at Hasbro. We're gaming and toy and play company, not a film and TV company. And so we sold the thing less than 3 years later, and now making a big bet on digital gaming. So all of those changes that were happening in the company was driving kind of different needs and different expectations from internal audit. And so, as I talked to my stakeholders, my CFO, my audit committee, they were looking for us to be doing more advisory, more consulting, to be like a co-pilot to the business and partner with them, to not just, go in after the fact and look at things, but actually be out in front of risks. They use the term, we want you to be out there fixing things before they become problems, which always makes me a little bit nervous. um, Certainly I have to remind them that, if there's 10 steps to fix something, we can be right there with management to step 9.5, but at the end of the day, they have to own it, right? Um, but what we were, where we were was the existing organization and internal audit just wasn't set up to deliver on that. We had talent in the wrong places for how the company was restructuring. In some cases, we just didn't have the right talent with the right competencies and skills. And being an advisor and a consultant is very different than being a traditional kind of tick and tie auditor. And we weren't efficient, in all honesty. Like, we were way above benchmarks when we looked at how long it took us to do SOX testing. I mentioned earlier we hadn't embraced technology really at the time, and so we it just it was time for a kind of radical reimagining of the department. So, like I said, we went down from 25 to 11. I kind of realigned response areas of responsibility and ownership with my team. I elevated some high performers to new roles. We brought in the strategic co-source partner. We are operating now as one team. So we run the SOX PMO. The co-source does all of the testing. They also provide us SMR support, targeted staffing for our other internal audit projects, both IT and operational. They're bringing kind of deep audit board expertise, analytics expertise, and tools to support that. And they're actually doing it for less cost than it was costing me for my in-house team. So it's definitely a journey. We're like 10 months in now, and I won't say it wasn't with a few bumps, certainly. Along the way, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do as a people leader, to make that decision, to take a risk, to shake things up so drastically. But I think we're in a really good place right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I went immediately. Was that had to be brutal. One of our clients had to let one person go like a year ago of the 35 on the team. And kind of ran through. We were talking and was like, this one are who I'm considering. And I was like, I love all of them though.
Oh, yeah.
Because like, how are you gonna do this?
Yeah.
And then since over the past, I guess, 5 months, there's been some additional changes that have been required. So that's not an easy position to
It was
be
not
in.
easy. Yeah.
Okay. I was listening to. It's funny how like when you're in a certain mindset, whatever you hear something related to it, your perspective is different. So similar to if you think about someone who's always positive, like everything in the world is positive to them, versus someone's negative. Anything that happens, it's there's a negative way of looking at it. And so anyway, I was listening to a podcast unrelated to any business, and I think it was I'm going through this thing right now. This is too much information. I heard Matthew McConaughey on this podcast a couple weeks ago, and like he just like cracked me up with how serious he is, and just some of the weird kind of stuff that he says. It's a borderline genius, but then also kind of like, are you high right now? Like, anyway, so I've just been listening to Matthew McConaughey interviews for the sake of comedy. Like, that's what I've been doing. So anyway, he was on Smartless. For those that don't know, I think it's the number two, three most downloaded podcast on any given week. And so anyway, on this episode, at some point, one of the hosts says something to the point they're talking about relationships, and they said, "Yeah, to have a relationship means to relate." And I went, "Never really thought about that before." But obviously, in doing talking CAEs on the podcast, relationships come up every single time,
Mhm.
and the importance of those. And I went, "Yeah, it is just about relating to someone if we kind of boil it down." So anyway, I know in being able, that's a long tangent to come back to where I'm initially started from and asking you this question, but um, you've been able to build credibility, and I will say relate. That's where all this was going to the board really well. What mindset do you have to be able to do that? And then what do you feel like if there's others CAEs who aren't great at doing that? What would you kind of suggest that they do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not perfect at this, and I continue to grow and develop in this area myself. This is my first CAE role. I was in consulting for a number of years before that, kind of advising other CAEs on how to do their jobs. It's much
Yeah.
harder when you're sitting in the seat. But I would say it's they're people. They're people, right? So, having a good relationship with your audit committee chair, is essential because they can be your biggest ally. They can be your biggest advocate. Whatever you need from them and you may be struggling with, whether it's budget or technology spend or people, but it's important to understand what they value and what they want. And so in order to do that, you have to ask questions, right? You have to really be in my case, be explicit, with saying what's important to you as you sit in this chair as a board member of publicly traded company. Like, what do you really need to know? What is important to you to feel comfortable, that things are working the way that they need to in the organization? Because that's a hard role, right? Being a public company director, like they parachute in. This is not their day job. They am bombarded with information, like 500-page audit committee packs that they get the day before if they're lucky, right? They in my experience too, they struggle with that concept of like, keeping their hands out, but their noses in kind of thing. So like they're all CFOs and really highly respected executives in their own organizations. And so they kind of struggle with that. But if you really take the time to ask them, what's important to you? What do you need to hear? What do you need from me in my role? They will tell you, and then you need to take every single opportunity to be responsive to that. So for me, it's just kind of being open to asking questions, remembering that they are real people, and recognizing that not every audit committee is the same, and has the same expectations. So, for my committee, like this is what they want to hear from me. And they've been very clear about this that, internal audit understands the strategy of the company. We understand the biggest risks that the company is facing to achieving our goals, and that our work is focused on those areas, plus any, the non negotiable stuff like SOX, which is super important to them. They also wanna know that we're tuned in to what's next. Like, what are the emerging risk areas that are gonna be impacting the company? Like, if I show up at our audit committee, later this month and don't talk about tariffs, it's gonna be a huge miss, right? And not just talk about tariffs from a risk perspective, but also what are we doing as internal audit to make sure that the company's not getting tripped up, as we navigate this very fluid, situation. And then just, here's where we're focused. Here's where we understand could be potential problem areas and how we're supporting the business to, get it fixed at the end of the day. That's what they want to hear. And if you have more than 10 minutes to communicate all of that in the meeting, you're lucky. So it's super important to be crisp. It does or any relationship building. I'm an introvert myself, so, it's kind of something a muscle I've had to build and flex over the years. But just have a conversation and ask questions and people will talk.
I really like simple solutions. And when one of those solutions is if you don't know what someone wants, just go ask them what they want from you. And I think if anyone does that who hasn't done it already, I think immediately you're going to start to see a better relationship with the board, with the audit committee, just by giving them basically what they want. Sometimes it can be hard for them to know exactly what that is, especially depending on their background. So we always advise like take a list of options to give them and go, here's everything that we can give you. Pick what you want from this. We will give it to you
Yeah,
within reason, of course. There's also this balance of you have to show as a CAE what you want to show them that they might not have asked for because we have to brag on ourselves a little bit. So there's a bit of a balance
there
there, but
is.
I love the just go ask. Okay. Anyway, with all that said, Shannon, thank you a ton for coming on. I'll give the mic to you. What do you want to leave the audience with?
So this is kind of you gave me kind of carte blanche for whatever I wanted to share, but I think the thing that's kind of most
Yep.
meaningful for me right now in this moment is that, talking with other internal auditors, like, don't ever be comfortable with your status quo. We live in a time of disruption and change, all around us every day at a pace that we're probably not super comfortable with in the macro environment, in our organizations, in our personal lives, etc. But I think we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and don't be afraid to disrupt yourself. It could be, a growth moment. And I've found, by disrupting my team and kind of taking a completely different tact here at Hasbro, that it has been a growth moment for me as a experienced internal auditor, both on the personal side and the professional side. So don't be afraid to shake things up.
I know I said I was going to let you close this out. I did have one more question. I've never done this before. I've always let the guests close. You said earlier you use ChatGPT to make like a Quizlet for your son. He's in school. Where's he going to school?
My son is a senior at the University of Alabama. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.